Why was the range so quiet? The best shooters in the army had already fired, and not one of them had struck the target. The sun beat down mercilessly over Fort Westwood's shooting range, baking the ground into a wavering haze. Generals, colonels, and civilian officials sat in the VIP stands, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses but their disappointment plain enough. A Barrett M82A1 lay idle on its bipod, its muzzle pointed at a steel plate 2 kilometers away. A monster of a rifle, heavy and unforgiving, designed to make war feel like science. But science had failed them. One by one, the Army's best had missed. At that distance, the air itself was an enemy, bending bullets off course with heat and wind. The crowd murmured, restless. Sweat rolled down the necks of decorated men who had built careers on precision. And then there was her. Cadet Olivia Hayes, 23. Pressed uniform, hair neat, posture perfect. She wasn't supposed to be here, not really, just an observer, a cadet among warriors, the kind of presence men like Major James Brandon mocked openly. His voice cut the silence like a blade. Having fun watching the big boys work, cadet? Laughter followed, the kind that dug under the skin. Olivia kept her gaze steady, her chin high. Yes, sir, learning a great deal, sir. She should have left it there, should have swallowed the insult and stood like furniture in the background. But she didn't. Her fingers had been twitching since the first missed shot. She had seen something in the mirage, in the patterns of the air rising above the hot ground, something no one else seemed to notice. And before she could stop herself, the words slipped out. Permission to attempt the shot, sir. The silence was brutal. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Officers exchanged smirks. Brandon turned on her, eyes narrowing. This isn't Cadet Day at the carnival, Hayes. This is a demonstration for professionals. But from the stands a deeper voice spoke. Colonel Anderson, silver hair, sharp eyes. Let her try, Brandon. What's the harm? Your professionals haven't exactly impressed us today. There it was, the trap. Brandon's jaw clenched, his pride pricked raw. He gave a curt nod. Fine, one shot, that's all. Olivia stepped forward. Each footfall felt louder than the last. She had never fired the Barrett outside of a simulator, but she had studied it obsessively, knew its ballistics by heart. Her grandfather had drilled her in principles that never left her. Breathing, patience, trust the math, trust your body. She lowered herself behind the rifle. The metal was hot under her palms, the weight of it settling against her shoulder. For a moment, the world blurred away. Her mind went somewhere else. Montana, 13 years earlier. A younger Olivia lying in the frost-dusted grass, a .22 resting against her small frame. Her grandfather's voice beside her, calm, steady. Breathing is everything, Liv. Control your breath, control your destiny. She'd squinted at a wooden target nearly 400 yards away. Too far for a child, too far for common sense. But she'd hit it. Not perfectly, but she'd hit it. He'd smiled at her, his weathered face breaking into rare softness. That's my girl, that's my Hayes. Back on the range, Olivia blinked. The memory was gone, but the lesson remained. She adjusted the scope. Once, twice, a third time. She could feel Brandon's glare burning through her, could hear the suppressed chuckles of men certain she was about to humiliate herself. She exhaled slowly, her finger tightened. The Barrett roared. 2,000 meters away, the steel target rang like a church bell. Center mass. Perfect. The spotter's voice cracked with disbelief. Hit, dead center. The stands erupted in chaos. Officers leaning forward, voices rising, a dozen conversations sparking at once, cadets staring wide-eyed. Even the cynical generals sat straighter. Olivia stood calm, expression unreadable. Inside, her heart was pounding. She'd done it, but she gave nothing away. She had learned from her grandfather, victory meant nothing if you needed applause to feel it. Major Brandon's face flushed dark, embarrassment, rage, fear of what this meant. He spat the words through clenched teeth. Beginner's luck. She didn't answer. Silence was sharper than any rebuttal. As the crowd dispersed, she felt the weight of 100 stares. Admiration from some, hostility from others. She had crossed a line she wasn't meant to. Colonel Anderson passed close, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Your grandfather would be proud." Her composure cracked for just a breath. Her grandfather, how did Anderson know? By the time she gathered herself, he was gone. That night, lying in her bunk, Olivia clutched the dog tags that had belonged to him. The man who raised her after her father left, after her mother drowned in work just to keep the lights on. The man who had shown her how to breathe with the earth, how to feel the wind on her skin, how to trust what others couldn't see. Thomas Hayes, Master Sergeant, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. She hadn't understood the full weight of that name until now. When cancer took him 2 years earlier, he left her a small wooden box. Inside, brass casings from every significant shot he ever made. Training, competitions, battles he never spoke of. Each casing labeled in his neat handwriting. And one final note scrawled with a shaky hand in his last days. "When they doubt, let your skill answer. The gun doesn't know if you're a man or woman, private or general. It only knows truth." She had read those words 100 times. Tonight, they pulsed like blood in her veins. But across the base, in the dim blue glow of his office, Major Brandon was pulling her file, and then another, and another. Thomas Hayes. The name hit him like a wound reopening. He had lost to Hayes once, decades ago, at Fort Bragg. Lost by inches, lost his chance at Delta, lost the career he thought was his birthright. And now here was the granddaughter, standing where she didn't belong, outshining him on his own range. Tomorrow, he promised himself, would be different. Tomorrow he'd break her. The war had only just begun. Why was she awake before dawn, staring at the ceiling, her hand wrapped tight around a pair of dog tags? Olivia Hayes had learned to live with nerves, inspections, drills, physical tests designed to break cadets in half, but this felt different. Last night, Major Brandon's words had followed her into her dreams like a shadow. "Tomorrow, my office, 800 hours, we'll see if lightning strikes twice." Sleep had been shallow, restless. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the laughter of the range, saw the contempt in Brandon's face, felt the target staring back at her. She knew what today meant. Brandon wasn't going to congratulate her. He wasn't going to test her fairly. He was going to crush her in front of everyone. At 4:30, unable to lie still, she dressed quietly in her PT gear and slipped into the chill of the pre-dawn. Fort Westwood was silent at this hour, the parade ground lit only by a fading moon. Her feet carried her toward the memorial garden, where rows of stone bore the names of the fallen. She wasn't here for them. She was here for stillness, for the silence that reminded her of Montana mornings with her grandfather, for the calm before chaos. But she wasn't alone. Early riser. Olivia turned sharply. Colonel Anderson stood near the monument, hands clasped behind his back. His posture was formal, but his expression carried something softer. She snapped to attention out of instinct. "At ease, cadet," he said, walking closer. "I come here most mornings myself, helps clear the head." "Yes, sir." For a moment they stood in silence, the air cool enough to sting. Anderson studied her with the kind of gaze that saw more than uniforms or ranks. "You created quite a stir yesterday." Olivia forced herself not to flinch. "It wasn't my intention, sir." Intentions rarely matter in the military, Hayes. Results do. He gestured toward the bench and they sat. "You know Brandon, going to try to break you today." She nodded once. "I figured as much, sir." "He's embarrassed. Made worse because it was a cadet who showed him up, and a female cadet at that." Her jaw tightened. "I just made a shot, sir, that's all." Anderson's smile was faint, knowing. A shot that half the special operations community couldn't make on their best day. His eyes sharpened. "I knew your grandfather, you know." Olivia's head snapped toward him. You did." Anderson nodded. "Desert Storm. I was a green lieutenant. Your grandfather was a staff sergeant then, best marksman in the entire theater, saved my unit, held off an enemy advance for hours from a hidden position. We never even saw where he was firing from." Olivia's throat tightened. Her grandfather had never told her this. He had spoken of patience, of breathing, of hunting on the Montana plains, but never of war, never of being the invisible shield that kept others alive. Anderson's voice softened. "So when Brandon pushes you today, remember whose blood runs in your veins." He stood to leave, then hesitated. "Your grandfather wore a white feather in his hat, didn't he?" "Yes, sir. I asked him about it once. He never answered, but the enemy had a name for him. White Feather. They put a bounty on his head." Anderson's gaze lingered on her. He was that feared, that good. And then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone with her pulse hammering and her mind racing. White Feather, a name whispered in shadows, now tied to her bloodline. At 600 sharp, she knocked on Major Brandon's office door. "Enter." The office was austere, walls lined with trophies and commendations. Brandon sat stiff behind his desk, flanked by two officers from the advanced marksmanship program. His smile was thin, cutting. "Gentlemen, this is our miraculous cadet," he said, sarcasm dripping. "One lucky shot and she thinks she's Carlos Hathcock." Olivia kept her eyes forward, her face impassive. She knew the name, Vietnam's legendary sniper, the man her grandfather sometimes spoke of with reverence. Brandon leaned forward. "Today we see what you're really made of. Not one shot, five different rifles, 5 different distances, no preparation time." Her pulse spiked, but she gave nothing away. "Unless, of course, you prefer to admit yesterday was just dumb luck. Save us all the trouble." "I'm ready for the challenge, sir." His eyes narrowed. "Tomorrow, 900 South Range, and Hayes, this time the entire base will be watching." "Understood, sir." She was dismissed, but the weight followed her like a shadow. 5 rifles, each with different ballistics. No practice, no warm-up. He wasn't testing her skill. He was setting a trap. Outside the barracks, Cadet Rodriguez was waiting. He'd heard enough in her face to know. "That bad, huh? 5 shots, 5 rifles tomorrow." He gave a low whistle. "He's not messing around." "Can you do it?" She thought of her grandfather's wooden box, of the brass casings and the careful notes, of the words he had left her. "When they doubt, let your skill answer." She squared her shoulders. "I have to." That night, while the others slept, Olivia sat cross-legged on her bunk. She opened the wooden box again. Each casing glinted softly in the lamplight, each label written in her grandfather's steady hand. Mogadishu, Fallujah, Fort Benning. Some were competitions, others clearly combat, classified places, nameless battles. Her fingers caught on something odd, a false bottom. She pried at it, heart quickening until it came free. Inside lay a small leather-bound notebook. Her breath caught. Pages and pages of his handwriting. Wind formulas, atmospheric corrections, ballistic curves, notes on techniques she'd never seen in training manuals. She flipped to the last page. The ink was shaky, written from a hospital bed. "When they doubt, you let your skill answer. The gun doesn't know, it only knows truth." Her throat burned. She closed the notebook carefully, tucked it against her chest, and whispered, "I'll answer, Grandpa, I promise." Morning broke clear and cool. By 8:45, the South Range was crowded. Cadets, drill instructors, off-duty personnel, all drawn by the rumor. A cadet taking on Brandon's impossible trial. Olivia arrived in full uniform, calm, collected, the dog tags hidden beneath her collar. At 900 sharp, Brandon strode in, Captain Lewis at his side, and a cart rolled out carrying 5 rifles. Olivia recognized each instantly: M4 carbine, M24 sniper rifle, M110 semi-automatic, M14 enhanced battle rifle, and at the end the Barrett M82A1, the beast she had already tamed once. Brandon's voice rang out. Yesterday, Cadet Hayes made what some considered an impressive shot. Today, we'll see if that was skill or just beginner's luck. He turned on her, his smile predatory. 5 shots, 5 different targets, no preparation, 30 seconds with each weapon before you fire. Begin. The crowd held its breath. Olivia stepped to the line. The first weapon waited. The M4. Target 300 meters. Easy on paper. Standard issue rifle. Standard distance. But nothing about this was standard. She picked it up, checked the sights, and fired within the count. The silhouette target snapped with a clean hole through its chest. 1 down. The M24 was next. Bolt action heavy with the target set at 800 meters. She adjusted the scope, remembering her grandfather's patient voice. The target isn't going anywhere. Take your time. The countdown raced in her ears. She squeezed the trigger just as Brandon called time. The spotter raised his voice. Hit center. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Brandon's jaw clenched. Next, M110, target 1,100 meters. She had never fired an M110 before, but she'd studied it, knew its quirks from her grandfather's notes. She settled, adjusted, fired. Hit inner ring. Not perfect, but good enough. The M14 came next. Target 600 meters. Moving. Olivia tracked the silhouette, calculating lead in her mind. Wind, distance, movement. She exhaled. Hit center. The crowd gasped. Brandon's face had gone crimson. Sweat beaded his brow. Final test. Barrett M82A1. Target 1,800 meters. 1 minute. Olivia lowered herself behind the beast again. The familiar weight steadied her. She could feel Brandon watching, waiting for her to fail. And to make things interesting, Brandon snapped his fingers. Massive fans roared to life at either side of the range, crosswinds hammering the field. Chaos. Colonel Anderson's voice cut sharp. That wasn't part of the agreement. Real-world conditions, Colonel, Brandon said smoothly. Unless Cadet Hayes wants to concede. All eyes turned to her. Olivia met Brandon's gaze. Calm, unflinching. No need, sir, I'm ready. She closed her eyes, felt the wind on her face, on her skin, in her hair. Beneath the chaos there was always a rhythm, a heartbeat. She waited, the seconds bleeding away. 20, 30, 40. And then there it was, the pattern, the break in the storm. She fired. The Barrett's thunder echoed. The crowd fell silent. Hit center ring. The range erupted. Cheers, disbelief, cadets shouting her name. Even officers nodded with respect. Olivia rose, composed, though her pulse hammered. She had done it, again. Colonel Anderson stepped forward, placing himself between her and Brandon's fury. That concludes today's demonstration. Cadet Hayes, well done. Brandon's voice was ice. Just because she can shoot doesn't mean. Doesn't mean what? Anderson cut him off, his tone like steel. That she doesn't have exceptional skill, that we shouldn't develop her instead of trying to break her. The crowd's eyes were on Brandon now. He swallowed his words, his rage coiling tighter. Olivia turned, walked off the line. Rodriguez fell into step beside her, his grin wide. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. For the first time that day, Olivia let a small smile touch her lips. But across the range, Brandon's glare followed her. He wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Why was the mess hall so quiet when she walked in? Forks clattered, conversations stuttered, and heads turned as Olivia stepped through the doorway. By evening, everyone at Fort Westwood had heard. The cadet had done it again. 5 rifles, 5 shots, 1 impossible windstorm, and not a single miss. Some stared in awe, others in disbelief, some with open resentment. Cadets shifted to make space, but no one spoke to her. Her tray felt heavier than usual, her steps slower, as though she were walking a gauntlet. Then a voice broke the silence. Room for 1 more. Cadet David Rodriguez stood there, tray in hand, his grin disarming. He slid into the seat across from her before she could answer. "You're the girl who showed up the snake pit of special ops wannabes," he said under his breath. "I wasn't trying to show anyone up," Olivia replied, keeping her voice low. "The shot needed to be made." Rodriguez studied her. "That's a 2,000-meter shot with a rifle you never fired before. Most career snipers would sacrifice their trigger finger for that kind of skill. Don't downplay it." Before Olivia could answer, a shadow fell over the table. Major Brandon. The mess hall froze. Conversations died. He loomed above her, his face carved into cold fury. "Enjoying your 15 minutes, cadet?" Olivia shot to her feet. "No, sir, just having dinner, sir." Brandon leaned closer, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. "My office, 600 hours, earlier than planned. Hope you're not a one-trick pony, Hayes." "I'll be there, sir." He turned on his heel and left, the air thawing only after his presence had vanished. Rodriguez gave a low whistle. "He's going to make you pay." "I know," Olivia said quietly. That night sleep refused her. She lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, her grandfather's dog tags clutched tight. Her mind replayed every moment: Brandon's eyes, Anderson's words, the impossible calm of the wind before she squeezed the trigger. Somewhere her grandfather's voice whispered, "When they doubt, let your skill answer." But doubt was poison, and it was spreading. Across base, Brandon sat in his office bathed in the blue glow of his computer screen. Files scrolled before his eyes: Thomas Hayes, Master Sergeant, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Most of the record was blacked out, redacted into silence, but not all. Desert Storm, Somalia, multiple commendations, international competitions, and then Fort Bragg 1991, the Marksmanship Championship. Brandon's name listed second, Thomas Hayes first. Brandon's jaw clenched. He remembered the sting of it, his path to Delta Force severed by an aging Marine outshooting him by inches. That loss had rerouted his entire career. And now, decades later, the granddaughter had stood on his range and humiliated him again. He leaned back, a cold smile forming. If she was Thomas Hayes's protege, then she carried his secrets, his methods, his legacy. This wasn't luck. It was inheritance. And Brandon would be damned before he let a cadet, any cadet, let alone her, take from him what he had lost. The next morning, Olivia reported to his office at 600 sharp. 3 officers were waiting: Brandon, Captain Lewis, Lieutenant Hayes from the advanced program. "Cadet Hayes," Brandon began, his voice smooth as glass, "you've drawn a lot of attention." "Yes, sir." "Attention isn't always a blessing. Yesterday proved you can handle a rifle, but there's more to soldiering than marksmanship." He paused, his eyes glinting. "Which is why I've arranged something special." Olivia stood motionless. "Next week, Fort Westwood will host the inter-service marksmanship competition. The best shooters from all branches will be here: Olympic-level marksmen, special forces snipers, the elite of the elite." Brandon let the words hang. "And you, cadet, will represent Fort Westwood in the long-range precision category." The air tightened. Olivia blinked once. "Sir, that competition is typically reserved for experienced operators." Brandon's smile was sharp. "Are you refusing the opportunity, cadet?" It was a trap. Refuse, and she would admit she wasn't ready. Accept, and she would face men and women with decades of combat experience. Either way, he won. Olivia straightened her shoulders. "No, sir, I'm honored to represent Fort Westwood." Brandon leaned back, satisfaction curling his lips. "Excellent. Preliminary assessment tomorrow, 700 South Range, and Hayes," his eyes gleamed. "The Army Chief of Staff will be attending. No pressure." Dismissed, she walked the long path back to the barracks, her mind a storm. She had stepped into the jaws of something far larger than herself. Rodriguez caught up with her outside. "You look like you've seen a ghost." 5 rifles was the warm-up, Olivia said flatly. "He's putting me in the inter-service competition." Rodriguez stopped cold. That's insane. Do you know who competes in that? Rangers, Green Berets, SEALs, operators with more notches on their rifles than you've got birthdays. I know. Then why? Because I didn't have a choice, she cut him off. Either I say yes and face them, or I say no and admit I don't belong here, and I do belong. Rodriguez studied her, then gave a small nod. Then I guess we better make sure you don't embarrass them. That night, Olivia sat with her grandfather's notebook open across her knees. The pages were filled with his careful calculations, diagrams, and lessons. But one line leapt out at her now, written in shaky hand near the end. Special ability comes with special responsibility. She traced the words with her finger, her chest tight. The following morning, the South Range was alive with activity. Instructors, cadets, officers, all had gathered. The inter-service competition was legend, and word had spread that a cadet would compete. Whispers followed her as she stepped forward. Colonel Anderson met her at the line, his expression firm but encouraging. "Remember what I told you, Hayes. It's not you against them. It's you against the target." "Yes, sir." A custom M24 sniper rifle was laid out before her. Not regulation issue, this one was different, sleek, balanced. Olivia ran her hands across it with reverence. "Colonel Anderson thought you might want to train with this," Master Sergeant Walsh explained, unlocking the case. "His personal rifle won him the championship 3 years ago." Olivia blinked. "I can't accept this." "It's not a gift," Walsh said. "It's a loan and maybe a vote of confidence." Her throat tightened. She adjusted the stock, lined up the sights, and breathed. For the next 2 hours she fired again and again, each shot steadier than the last. But confidence was fragile. Later that afternoon, Rodriguez burst into the armory holding a tablet. "You need to see this." On screen, a military forum buzzed with comments. A thread titled "Cadet versus Pros." Hundreds of voices, most predicting her failure. Some mocking her, some cruel, others questioning if she'd only earned her spot because of her grandfather. The words hit like shrapnel: nepotism, lucky shot, writing his name. Olivia set the tablet down carefully. "Let them talk." Rodriguez shook his head. "This isn't just talk. Brandon been feeding the fire, calling you arrogant, saying you think you're better than the men who bled for this." Her jaw tightened. "Then I'll let my skill answer." That night, in the fading light of the memorial garden, Anderson found her sitting alone. "Rough day?" he asked. "Just focusing, sir." He studied her. "Brandon's playing psychological warfare. It's what he does. Your grandfather faced the same in Desert Storm. They called him White Feather, put a bounty on his head." Olivia looked at him sharply. "He never told me." "He wouldn't. Men like him don't seek recognition. They just do the work. Remember, Hayes, the competition isn't about proving yourself to them. It's about proving yourself to yourself." As he walked away, she touched the dog tags beneath her uniform. The weight steadied her. 3 days before the competition, Olivia arrived at the range to find a new presence: Navy SEALs. Their tridents gleamed on their uniforms. One of them, a senior chief with weathered eyes, approached her. "You the cadet everyone's talking about?" "Yes, sir." "Hayes, any relation to Thomas Hayes?" She hesitated. "My grandfather." The man's demeanor changed instantly. "Staff Sergeant Hayes was a legend. I qualified as a sniper using his manual." He extended his hand. "Senior Chief Michael Shaw, don't let these Army boys rattle you. You've got the bloodline." For the first time since Brandon's announcement, respect, not skepticism, met her. And in Shaw's words she heard something else. Her grandfather's shadow stretched farther than she ever imagined. The competition was coming, and this time failure wouldn't just embarrass her, it would echo across branches, across the Pentagon itself. Why did her boots feel heavier than usual? Olivia Hayes marched toward the competition field, every step echoing in her skull like a drum. The Inter-Service Marksmanship Championship was already legendary, whispered about in barracks across every branch of the military. And now, somehow, impossibly, she was here, a cadet among warriors. The parade ground had been transformed. Grandstands lined the perimeter. Media cameras, civilian and military, were positioned behind the ropes. A dozen flags from every service fluttered in the crisp wind. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, even international observers had come. And at the center, 5 long shooting lanes stretched into the horizon, each marked with targets at impossible distances. The competitors were already gathered. Hardened men and women, shoulders squared, faces calm in the way only veterans of combat could be calm. Rangers, Green Berets, Recon Marines, Navy SEALs. Each radiated confidence, the quiet kind that didn't need to be spoken. And then there was her. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Olivia stepped into line. She could feel the stares like heat on her skin, some curious, some hostile, some pitying, a cadet in a storm of professionals. Major Brandon stood off to the side, hands clasped behind his back, his smile faint and poisonous. "Cadet Hayes," a voice called. She turned. Colonel Anderson approached, his expression steady. He handed her the rifle case. The custom M24 he had lent her. His words were simple but heavy. "Breathe, trust your eyes, you belong here." She nodded once. The announcer's voice boomed across the field. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 47th Annual Inter-Service Marksmanship Championship. Today's long-range precision event will push each competitor to their limits. Targets range from 800 meters to 2,000 meters. Each competitor will fire under timed conditions. Scoring will be by accuracy and consistency. May the best marksman or woman prevail." Olivia's pulse hammered. She remembered her grandfather's words in that old notebook. Special ability comes with special responsibility. The first competitor stepped forward, a Ranger sergeant, calm, deliberate. He hit 4 out of 5, each in tight groupings. The crowd applauded. Next, a Marine Scout sniper, 5 for 5, surgical precision. Then a Navy SEAL, another perfect run. The pressure grew with every shot. Olivia's palms itched, her breath shallow. Finally, her name was called. "Cadet Olivia Hayes, Fort Westwood." The murmur of the crowd grew. Cameras swiveled toward her. Brandon's smile deepened. Olivia stepped to the line. She set the rifle down, adjusted the stock, and lay prone. The grass was cool beneath her elbows. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Montana mornings, frost on the field, her grandfather's voice steady and calm. "Control your breath, Liv. The target isn't going anywhere." The timer began. First target, 800 meters. She adjusted, exhaled, fired. Hit center. The crowd reacted with surprise. Second target, 1,200 meters. She corrected for the wind, squeezed. Hit inner ring. Her pulse steadied. She was in the rhythm now. Third target, 1,500 meters. A shift in the crosswind. She recalculated in her head, trusting instinct more than math. Hit outer ring. Not perfect, but a hit. Fourth target, 1,800 meters. She exhaled, her heartbeat slowing. Hit center. The crowd erupted. Final target, 2,000 meters, the monster. Only one competitor had hit it today, the Marine sniper. The others had missed by inches. Olivia's chest tightened. She adjusted the scope. The mirage shimmered above the target. The wind tugged at the grass. She felt the seconds slipping away. And then she stopped thinking. She felt. She breathed. The world narrowed to the scope, the target, the rhythm in her chest. She fired. The Barrett's thunder rolled across the range. A pause. Then the spotter's voice, almost incredulous. Hit dead center. The crowd erupted. Cadets leapt to their feet. Even seasoned operators nodded in respect. Olivia lowered the rifle slowly, her face calm though her pulse was a storm. She rose, saluted, and stepped back. The announcer's voice rang out. 5 for 5, Cadet Hayes' perfect score. For a moment the field was chaos. Applause, disbelief, muttered curses. Brandon's face drained of color. Colonel Anderson approached, his hand firm on her shoulder. Outstanding, Hayes, outstanding. But Olivia barely heard him. Her mind was spinning. The stares from the crowd weren't just admiration now. They were recognition. She had crossed another line. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was a name. That night the base buzzed, the cadet who had beaten the operators. The whispers of her grandfather's name resurfaced. White feather, Hayes, legacy reborn. Olivia sat alone in her barracks, the wooden box open before her. She turned the brass casings over in her hand, one after another, each labeled with battles and places. She thought of the weight of history, of expectation. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Nice shooting today, but be careful who you trust. A friend. Her chest tightened. She looked around the barracks. Everyone else was asleep. The message was gone as quickly as it came. The next morning she reported to Brandon's office. He sat stiff, his eyes dark. "You think you've accomplished something, Hayes," he said, voice low. "You think hitting targets on a range makes you a soldier." "No, sir," she answered evenly. "You embarrassed this base. You embarrassed me. Don't think for a second that means you've earned anything." "I didn't do it for recognition, sir." He leaned forward, eyes burning. "You carry your grandfather's name like a shield, but let me tell you something. Out there in real combat, names mean nothing. Bloodlines mean nothing. And if you think you'll walk his path, you're dead wrong." Her jaw tightened. She gave no answer. He smiled coldly. "We'll see how long you last when it isn't a paper target staring back at you." As she left, his words followed her like smoke. Later that day, Colonel Anderson found her by the memorial garden. "You did something extraordinary, Hayes," he said. "But extraordinary comes with a cost. The Pentagon's already asking about you. They want to know who trained you, where you came from." "I'm no one, sir," Olivia whispered. Anderson studied her. "No one doesn't hit a 2,000-meter shot under pressure. No one doesn't rattle the entire special operations community. You're more than you think. And the people who want to use you will be coming soon." His words sank heavy. She touched her grandfather's dog tags, her mind swirling. She had wanted to prove she belonged. Now she had proved too much. That night, lying in her bunk, she couldn't sleep. She thought of the message, "Be careful who you trust." She thought of Brandon's fury, of Anderson's warning. And she thought of her grandfather's note. "The gun doesn't know who you are. It only knows truth." But what was truth? That she was her grandfather's granddaughter, that she was just a cadet who got lucky, or something else entirely. Outside, the wind shifted through the trees, whispering like a ghost. Somewhere deep down, Olivia knew. This was no longer about targets on a range. Something larger was moving, and she was already caught in its sights. Why did the summons feel more like a sentence than an honor? The envelope had arrived before dawn, delivered by a runner with no explanation. Inside, a single line typed in cold black ink. "Report to the Pentagon liaison, 900 hours, classified briefing." Olivia Hayes sat frozen on her bunk, the paper trembling between her fingers. Just days ago, she was a cadet fighting for respect on a rifle range. Now, the Pentagon wanted her. Rodriguez leaned against the doorframe, watching her carefully. "You should be proud. They don't just summon cadets." "Proud isn't what I feel," Olivia admitted. "What then?" She looked up at him, eyes steady, targeted. The word hung heavy in the air. At 900, she entered the briefing room. It was smaller than she expected. No grandeur, no polished brass, just 4 men in uniform and a single projector. Colonel Anderson was there, standing apart, his face unreadable. "Cadet Hayes, one of the generals said, gesturing for her to sit. "We've reviewed footage of your performance at Fort Westwood and the inter-service competition. Your ability to read wind, adjust in real time, and execute precision fire exceeds not only your peers but many of our best operators." Olivia swallowed, saying nothing. The general leaned forward. "We are forming a pilot program, a new unit built around unconventional talent, people who don't fit the mold but redefine it. We want you considered for inclusion." Her heart hammered. A cadet invited into something beyond special operations. It didn't make sense. But another officer spoke, his tone sharper. "There are risks, public perception, unit cohesion. Many already question your legitimacy. Some call it nepotism. They say you're trading on your grandfather's name." Olivia's jaw tightened. "I never asked to carry his name into this." "Perhaps not," the general said. "But you can't escape it, and we're deciding whether you'll carry it into something greater or whether Major Brandon is right about you." The mention of his name snapped her attention up. Major Brandon. The general's expression shifted. "He recommended you. Said if you're truly as skilled as you claim, a real-world trial would prove it. He believes the only way to settle the debate is to put you in the field." Her stomach dropped. Brandon, of course. This was his hand, his scheme. He wanted her in combat, not to elevate her but to break her. The briefing ended with no clear answer, only a warning. "You'll be notified. Until then, train, prepare." Back in the barracks, Olivia stared at her grandfather's notebook. The pages blurred before her eyes. Real-world trial. She was a cadet, not a combatant. No deployment orders should touch her, but Brandon had found a way. That night she dreamed of Montana again, her grandfather lying in the grass beside her, his voice calm as the wind. "The target isn't always what you think it is. Sometimes it's the fear itself. Hit that and you've already won." She woke in the dark, her chest tight, the dog tags warm against her skin. 2 days later, the orders came. A training exercise in undisclosed terrain, joint operation, live rounds, observers from the Pentagon, Cadet Olivia Hayes attached under special waiver. Rodriguez caught her before she boarded the transport. "Liv, this isn't training. You know that, right?" "I know. You could get killed out there." She looked at him, eyes steady, hiding the fear that gnawed at her. "Then I'll die proving I belong." The C-130 thundered over nameless mountains, its interior rattling with gear and tension. Operators sat around her, silent, faces hard. Rangers, Marines, a Navy SEAL team. Each gave her the same glance, skeptical, dismissive, some openly hostile. One finally spoke, a Marine gunnery sergeant with scars across his jaw. "What's the cadet here for? To carry our ammo." Olivia met his stare. "To do my part, Sergeant." He smirked, shook his head, and turned away. Colonel Anderson was there too, though not in command, only observing. His eyes caught hers across the plain, steady, grounding. A silent message: you can do this. Remember who you are. The mission was laid out bluntly. A remote valley, hostile insurgents occupying a fortified ridge. The operators would move in, neutralize targets, secure intel. Olivia's role was unstated, undefined. She was there to see if she could survive. As the team disembarked under moonlight, the air was cold, the silence absolute. Boots crunched against stone. Olivia moved in the rear, rifle cradled, breath shallow. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound sharpened her nerves. Hours of crawling, moving, waiting. The valley loomed before them, dark shapes shifting in the distance. The point man froze, raising a fist. Movement ahead. Insurgent patrol. The operators melted into cover. Olivia pressed against the dirt, her heart slamming. She raised her rifle, scope steady on the patrol leader's chest. She could feel the trigger under her finger. But she hesitated. This wasn't a target plate. This was a man breathing, moving, alive. The operators opened fire. Quick, efficient, the patrol dropped. Silence returned. "Move," the team leader whispered. They pushed forward, climbing the ridge. Olivia's hands trembled, though she fought to steady them. She'd almost fired, almost ended a life. Her grandfather's words echoed in her head. "The gun doesn't know who you are, it only knows truth." But what was the truth now? That she could kill, that she had to. The team reached Overwatch before dawn. The valley spread below, the insurgent compound lit faintly by lanterns. Guards patrolled, weapons slung. The SEAL chief, Shaw, crawled to her side. "You've got glass, take a look." Olivia adjusted her scope, scanning. Guard at the east tower, another near the vehicles, a man lighting a cigarette by the main building. Her finger hovered near the trigger. Every instinct screamed. Every lesson demanded calm. Then Shaw's whisper, "You see the commander, the one with the radio, he goes first." Her pulse thundered. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. She exhaled, the valley narrowing to one man's chest in her crosshairs. For a heartbeat, she was back in Montana. Frost, silence, her grandfather beside her. She squeezed. The rifle cracked. The man dropped, his radio clattering to the dirt. The ridge erupted in chaos. Shouts below, gunfire. The operators moved instantly, rifles spitting fire. Olivia's world blurred into noise, smoke, adrenaline. She fired again, another target and another, each shot precise, each man falling before he knew what hit him. Her body acted, her mind tried to catch up. With each trigger pull, a piece of her shifted. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She wasn't just her grandfather's granddaughter. She was a soldier in combat. Minutes stretched like hours, then silence. The compound was secured, insurgents dead or captured. The operators regrouped, breathing hard but alive. Shaw clapped her shoulder. "Not bad for your first night, cadet." Olivia said nothing. She stared at her hands. They weren't trembling anymore, and that scared her more than the firefight had. Back at base, Brandon was waiting. He stood in the hangar as they returned, his smile sharp and cruel. "Well," he said, voice carrying, "looks like the cadet finally fired at something that shot back. Congratulations, Hayes, you're blooded now." Olivia's stomach twisted. There was no pride in his words, only poison. Anderson stepped between them, his voice cold. "She proved herself. That's all that matters." But Olivia heard Brandon's whisper as he leaned close when the others moved past. "You think tonight makes you a soldier. All it makes you is complicit. Let's see how long you can carry that weight before it breaks you." That night in the barracks, Olivia sat alone. The wooden box was open on her lap. She placed a spent casing inside, no label, no words. Her hands shook as she closed it. Her grandfather's voice haunted her. "The target isn't always what you think it is." Tonight the target had been men, and she had hit them. But the real target was inside her. The fear, the doubt, the weight of becoming something she wasn't sure she could survive being. Why did the applause sound louder than the gunfire? 2 weeks after the Valley raid, Olivia Hayes found herself standing in an auditorium at Fort Belvoir, a sea of uniforms before her, generals on the stage beside her. The press was there too, military correspondents, their cameras clicking, their pens scratching. The Army had decided she was a story worth telling. Cadet Hayes distinguished herself in live combat, the general declared, his voice booming across the hall. In an operation observed by multiple branches, she demonstrated not only skill but composure under fire. She is proof that talent and dedication know no rank. The room erupted in applause, cameras flashed, Olivia's stomach twisted. She stood there, eyes forward, expression locked into calm. But inside, all she could see was the man with the radio dropping, his body crumpling into the dirt. The echo of her rifle lived louder than any cheer. Later, when the speeches ended, officers and journalists crowded her. Questions blurred into one another. How did it feel? Was she proud? Did her grandfather teach her everything she knew? Olivia answered carefully, mechanically. I did my duty, I trained, I trusted my team. But the truth pressed harder with every question. She didn't feel proud. She felt hollow. Colonel Anderson intercepted her before the press could swarm further. He guided her into a side hallway, his tone quiet but firm. You handled yourself well up there. I don't feel like I did, sir. Anderson studied her. That's the mark of someone who understands what it means to take a life. If you ever stop feeling the weight, then you should be worried. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. But across the hall she caught sight of Major Brandon speaking in hushed tones with a Pentagon official. Their eyes flicked toward her. Brandon's smile was thin, serpentine. That night Olivia couldn't sleep. The barracks were quiet, Rodriguez breathing steadily in the bunk across the room. She sat with her grandfather's notebook open, staring at the lines she'd memorized. Special ability comes with special responsibility. The gun doesn't know who you are, it only knows truth. She traced the words with her finger, whispering, but what if I don't want to be their symbol? Days blurred into new routines. High-ranking visitors arrived at Fort Westwood, wanting to meet the sniper cadet. She was paraded at demonstrations, asked to lecture classes she should have still been attending. Soldiers she barely knew asked for her autograph, as though she were already a legend. Rodriguez noticed the strain. You hate this, don't you? He said one evening as they sat on the training bleachers, watching the sun set over the range. Olivia didn't answer at first. Then she said softly, they're turning me into something I'm not. My grandfather never wanted glory. He hid from it. Why should I be any different? Because they won't let you hide, Rodriguez said. You've done too much. Before she could reply, a shadow fell over them. Brandon. Touching conversation, he sneered. Don't forget, Hayes, you're still a cadet. All this attention doesn't make you untouchable. It just makes you a bigger target. Olivia met his gaze. If you're trying to intimidate me, sir, it's not working. He smiled thinly. Not yet. The next day, new orders arrived. Olivia was to travel to Washington, D.C. for a private briefing with the Pentagon's Advanced Capabilities Division. Rodriguez clapped her shoulder as she packed. Just don't forget us little people when they pin your stars. She gave him a faint smile. You know I never wanted this. Doesn't matter, he said. You've got it. The Pentagon was colder than she expected. Not in temperature, but in presence. Polished halls, guarded doors, the hum of power pressing in from every side. She was ushered into a secure room where 3 men waited, suits instead of uniforms. Cadet Hayes, one said, offering a thin smile. We're interested in exploring your potential, not just as a marksman, but as something more. They spoke of a new program, precision warfare, AI-assisted ballistics, drone coordination integrated with human shooters. Olivia's role would be to bridge the gap, to prove that human instincts still mattered in the age of machines. Her head spun. She was barely 23, a cadet, and yet they spoke as if she were already enlisted into history. Finally she asked, why me? One of the officials leaned forward. Because we've seen what you can do, and because your grandfather's legacy carries weight. Thomas Hayes wasn't just a sniper, he was a ghost. Entire operations turned on his trigger finger. You've inherited that. We intend to see how far it goes. Olivia's chest tightened. They weren't just interested in her. They were mining the shadow of her grandfather. Back at Fort Westwood, Brandon was waiting when she returned. His smirk told her everything. He knew. So, he drawled, the Pentagon's golden girl returns. How does it feel to be their pet project? Olivia kept her voice level. I'm not anyone's pet. His eyes glinted. You think they care about you. They care about your name, your blood, your story. And when you've served your purpose, they'll discard you, just like they did him. She froze. What are you talking about? Brandon leaned close, his voice a venomous whisper. Ask Anderson what really happened to your grandfather. Ask him why the Pentagon buried half his record in black ink. You'll see your legacy isn't what you think. Her pulse hammered. She forced herself not to react, not to give him the satisfaction. She walked away, but his words echoed long after he was gone. That night she confronted Anderson in the memorial garden. The air was heavy, the night silent but for the chirp of insects. "Sir," she said quietly, "I need to know, did the Pentagon discard my grandfather?" Anderson hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Olivia, please don't protect me, not from this." He exhaled slowly. "Your grandfather was the best sniper I ever served with, but yes, he was used, overused. Missions no one else could handle were given to him again and again. And when he began to question, when he refused an op he knew was political, not tactical, they sidelined him, buried his record, let him fade out." Olivia's chest ached. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he didn't want you to carry his bitterness," Anderson said softly. "He wanted you to carry his lessons. There's a difference." She looked away, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. "So Brandon was right. I'm just another pawn." "No," Anderson said firmly. "You're not, unless you let them make you one." She stood there in silence, gripping the dog tags beneath her collar, torn between pride and despair, between legacy and independence. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but resolute. "Then I'll decide what kind of haze I am." Anderson nodded once. "That's all your grandfather ever wanted." But as Olivia walked back alone, Brandon's words echoed like a curse. "They'll discard you, just like they did him." She touched the dog tags, whispering into the night, "I won't let them." Yet deep down, a truth gnawed at her. She wasn't sure if the fight ahead would be against enemies across the ocean, or against the very institution she'd sworn to serve. Why did the air taste like dust and betrayal? The transport plane banked low over a stretch of nameless desert, the horizon painted in fading red. Olivia Hayes sat strapped in, her rifle case across her knees, her knuckles white. Around her, operators checked gear, adjusted night vision, said nothing. She didn't know their names. She didn't need to. She was the outsider, the cadet plucked from Fort Westwood and dropped into a storm far beyond her rank. The mission brief had been delivered in clipped, sterile words. A rogue cell, intelligence suggesting links to smuggled weapons, a compound in the desert fortified but vulnerable. Simple, they'd said, contained. But Olivia could read the silences between their sentences. Nothing about this was simple. Colonel Anderson hadn't been allowed on this op. That, more than anything, told her Brandon's fingerprints were all over it. The SEAL team leader leaned across the aisle. Senior Chief Michael Shaw, weathered face, calm eyes, he gave her a nod. "Stay close, trust your instincts." She returned the nod, grateful for his presence. He was one of the few who hadn't looked at her with disdain. The plane shuddered, the ramp opened, heat and dust blasted in. "Move!" Boots hit sand, the night swallowed them whole. The desert was a graveyard of silence, broken only by the crunch of gear and the whisper of wind. Olivia moved with the column, every nerve alert. Her scope scanned shadows, her finger brushed the trigger guard. She breathed slow, steady. Montana mornings. Her grandfather's voice steady as frost. They reached the ridge overlooking the compound. Below, lanterns flickered, guards paced, trucks idled. Olivia adjusted her scope, marking targets. "Hayes," Shaw whispered, "you see the commander." She scanned. A figure near the central building, radio at his hip, posture commanding. "I see him." "Take the shot." Her breath slowed, she exhaled, her finger tightened. The man dropped, the compound erupted. Gunfire shredded the night. Operators poured rounds into the chaos, moving with deadly precision. Olivia shifted targets, fired again. Each shot a calculation, each kill a weight pressing into her chest. Shouts rose from the compound. Mortar tubes appeared, men scrambling to fire. Olivia shifted, heart hammering, squeezed. One dropped, another. The tube fell silent. But then movement on the ridge, too close, insurgents flanking. Contact left, someone shouted. Muzzle flashes ripped the night, dirt sprayed around her. Olivia dropped flat, returned fire. Her round cut one down, then another. Her pulse was thunder, her mind a storm. Shaw's voice cut through. Fall back, regroup. They pulled into cover, rounds hissing overhead. Olivia's chest burned, her magazine emptied. Her hands reloaded on instinct, the way her grandfather had drilled into her. Smooth, steady, no panic. Minutes stretched like lifetimes, and then silence. The compound was broken. Survivors fled into the desert. The team regrouped. Sweat poured down faces, lungs heaved. Olivia's hands shook as she lowered her rifle. She looked down the ridge at the bodies, shadows sprawled in unnatural stillness. Men, breathing once, now silent. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred, she wanted to vomit. Shaw touched her shoulder. You did good. She shook her head. I killed them. You saved us, don't confuse the two. But she wasn't sure. The exfil was long, tense. The desert stretched endless, swallowing their footsteps. Olivia walked in silence, her rifle heavy. Back at the airfield, Brandon was waiting. Of course he was. He stood with Pentagon officials, his expression carved in smug stone. Well, cadet, he drawled as they disembarked. You survived. I suppose that counts for something. Olivia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The officials spoke instead. Your performance exceeded expectations, Hayes. We'll be reviewing the footage. For now, you'll remain attached to the program. Footage, of course. Every moment had been recorded. Every shot, every hesitation, every kill. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a specimen under glass. That night, alone in her temporary quarters, she opened her grandfather's notebook. The pages blurred in her trembling hands. She searched for something, anything, to make sense of what she felt. Her eyes caught on one line, scrawled near the end. There is no glory in the shot that ends a life. Only weight. If you can carry it and still remain human, you are stronger than any soldier. Her throat burned. Tears fell onto the page. She whispered, Grandpa, I don't know if I can. The door creaked. Rodriguez slipped in, grinning faintly. He wasn't supposed to be here, but he always found a way. Heard you lit up the desert. Her eyes flashed. Don't say it like that. He sobered. All right, then tell me how you feel. She shook her head, staring at the notebook. Like I'm becoming something I never wanted to be. Olivia, he said gently, you don't get to choose the wars they send you to, but you get to choose who you are inside them. That's what matters. Her chest tightened. What if who I am isn't enough? Then you fight until it is, he said simply. She closed the notebook, her hand steadier. But across the base, Brandon met with the Pentagon officials in the shadows of a hangar. She performed, one said. For now, Brandon replied. His eyes gleamed with venom. But cracks are showing. She hesitated, she doubts. All I have to do is keep pushing. She'll break. And if she does? Brandon's smile was cold. Then I'll make sure she does. The officials exchanged uneasy looks. They wanted results, not vendettas. But Brandon had power, connections, and his obsession with Thomas Hayes's granddaughter was now entangled with their program. The next morning, Olivia was summoned again. This time the briefing was sharper. A new target, a new mission, higher stakes. She felt the walls closing in. Each mission wasn't about the enemy anymore. It was about her, testing her, proving her, breaking her. And in the quiet moments between, she began to realize something chilling. The war she was fighting wasn't just against insurgents in deserts or mountains. It was against the people who were supposed to be on her side. Why did silence feel louder than gunfire? Olivia Hayes sat in a windowless room deep inside the Pentagon, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. A single camera blinked red in the corner. She had just returned from her second classified mission. Another desert, another compound, Another tally of lives she could never erase. Across the table sat three officials in suits, their faces calm, unreadable. Major Brandon leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes burning with satisfaction. "Cadet Hayes," one of the officials began, "your performance continues to impress. 2 successful operations, exceptional precision, minimal collateral. You are proving that instinct and discipline combined with technology can redefine the future of warfare." Olivia stared at the table, her jaw tight. She wanted to feel pride. Instead, she felt the weight of each casing she had dropped into her grandfather's wooden box, the weight of becoming exactly what Brandon wanted, a tool. Another official spoke. "We are prepared to fast-track your commission, full assignment to the program. You'll no longer be a cadet, you'll be an operative." Brandon's smile widened. "There it is, recognition just like your grandfather, the Pentagon's ghost, the white feather reborn." Olivia finally lifted her eyes, her voice steady but sharp. "And when I've served my purpose, when I've become your weapon, what then? Do I get buried in redacted files like he did?" The words cut through the room like a shot. The officials exchanged glances. Brandon's smile faltered just for a moment. "Your grandfather questioned orders," one official said carefully. "He let emotion interfere with duty. You're not him." "No," Olivia said quietly, "I'm not." The briefing ended in uneasy silence. Brandon's glare followed her as she left, his jaw tight with rage. That night, Olivia sat alone in her quarters, the notebook open on her lap. The final page stared back at her, her grandfather's shaky handwriting clear in the lamplight. "Sometimes the truest shot isn't the one you take with a rifle. It's the one you take by standing where no one else will." She traced the words with her finger, her chest heavy. She thought of the men she had killed, of the cheers, the applause, the cameras, of the way Brandon's hatred wrapped around her like barbed wire. She thought of Anderson's quiet warnings, Rodriguez's loyalty, Shaw's respect. And she knew she couldn't keep letting others aim her. The chance came sooner than expected. Another mission, this one different, urban terrain. Intelligence said insurgents were hiding in an apartment complex, civilians still inside. The orders were clear, neutralize the threat. No hesitation. Olivia's gut twisted. She had seen enough of war to know how fragile intelligence could be. The operators deployed at night, streets empty, the city hushed. Olivia moved to overwatch on a rooftop, her scope sweeping windows. Inside, she saw movement, men with rifles, yes, but also women, children, families huddled in corners, terrified. Her comms crackled, Brandon's voice. He wasn't in the field, but somehow he was on the line. "Hayes, clear the building, no exceptions, do your job." Her finger tightened on the trigger. A man with a rifle appeared in her crosshairs. She could end him. She could follow orders. But her grandfather's words echoed. "Sometimes the truest shot isn't the one you take." Olivia's chest heaved. She switched channels. "Command, civilians in the building, multiple, recommend aborting strike." Brandon's voice snapped back. "Negative, execute, that's an order." Her hands trembled, her breath caught. Then she lowered the rifle. No shot. The line went silent. Then Brandon's roar. "Hayes, you disobey, you're finished." But she didn't fire, she didn't move. She held her position, scope steady, protecting instead of destroying. And then her choice proved right. On the ground, operators breached cautiously instead of storming. They separated insurgents from civilians, neutralized the threat without killing the innocent. It was slower, riskier, but no families died that night. Back at base, the fury came swift. Brandon stormed into the debrief, face red, veins bulging. "You disobeyed a direct order." Olivia stood tall, her voice calm. "I prevented civilian casualties. That was my duty." "You're a cadet," he spat. "You don't get to decide." Colonel Anderson stepped in, his tone like steel. "She did decide, and she was right." Brandon whirled on him. You're enabling her. She's reckless. She's dangerous." Anderson's gaze didn't waver. "No, Major. She's exactly what this army needs. Someone who remembers that a trigger pull isn't just numbers on a scoreboard, it's lives." The officials reviewed the footage. The evidence was clear. Olivia's call had saved dozens. She had disobeyed, yes, but in doing so, she had done what the doctrine claimed to value above all else: protect the innocent. Brandon was silenced, not defeated, never that, but cornered, his vendetta exposed, his authority cracked. Days later, Olivia stood in the memorial garden, the wooden box in her hands. She slid one final casing inside, the round she had chambered but never fired. No label, just memory. Rodriguez appeared beside her, quiet. "You didn't take the shot." She shook her head. "Not every battle is won by pulling a trigger." He smiled faintly. "You sound like him." Her eyes lifted to the names carved in stone. Her grandfather's voice seemed to ride the wind. She breathed deep, steady. When she walked away from the garden, she felt lighter. Not because the weight was gone, it never would be, but because she had chosen how to carry it. The Pentagon would still watch her. Brandon would still hate her. The world would still expect her to be a weapon, but she knew something now, something she hadn't before. Her grandfather's legacy wasn't in the kills he made. It wasn't in the fear he inspired, or the redacted files, or the whispers of white feather. It was in restraint, in humanity, in remembering that dignity doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just refuses. Sometimes the truest shot is the one you don't take.